Now with this tutorial, we're going to write a program that will average test scores based on how many students took the test. This is going to be based off the following pseudocode, where we have a module that declares our variables, a module that gets how many students took the test, one that gets the scores and accumulates them, one that calculates the average and then prints it out. So again, our loop is inside of main, and also we have a loop. We can use a for loop in Python to calculate our scores and total them up, and then our other modules to do the other work. So we're going to start with Raptor. Now here we're going to save this as lab6-4. Make this a little bit bigger. And we're going to start by following the pseudocode. Our first module is to declare our variables, and we need to set these equal to 0. So instead of putting all of this in main, again, we're going to create a module that will do this to kind of simplify what's going on in main. So inside of here, if we're following the pseudocode, we're going to jump down to here, and we have a total of 6 variables that we're going to set equal to 0, 0.0, and why we're doing the 0.0 is so that in Python we get a correct decimal value, or no, depending on what the variables are. So over here we'll have 6 assignment statements that will do this. Again, our first one is end program, because we want to continue to run this multiple times. And then we have different variables like total scores set to 0.0, scores and counter so that we can run our loop around and so on. So follow the syntax there. The next thing that we're going to do in main is we're going to add a while loop that's going to run our program multiple times. And then we must reset our variables so that when we run it multiple times, it processes properly. So back here in main, we'll add our first loop to run multiple times, and then we could, we have a while loop, so we'll add that in there. We could either reset all of our variables, or we could just declare our variables again. Notice I spelled that wrong, but if it's spelled wrong everywhere, that's okay. So that will reset everything. Now this while loop that controls this is end program. When the end program is equal to yes, we want to end our program. Otherwise, what we want to do is to run our code. So after we reset or declare our variables again, then what we're going to do is start our calls. We have 4 calls: get number, get scores, get average, and print average. So we'll add all 4 of those module calls here in main. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now this module, what this does is simply an input into the number variable. And what this does is it controls how many students, or it asks how many students took the test. So that's into our variable called number. You'll want to complete that. Our next module is called get scores, and this is where our other loop is going to take place. So when we go over here, let's look at the pseudocode for that. What we have in here is our for loop. Now in Raptor, it doesn't matter. A loop is a loop, so you can't specify a for loop. The only thing you can do is put your counter, your code above the decision or after the decision. So here, we're going to have our for loop, or a loop. And what we have here is we have counter, we set equal to 1. So back in here, this will set equal to 1. And number has a value from here. So we want to ask, while normally we'd say while counter is less than number, but if that's true, in this situation, it will end. Now we want to write it opposite here, because if we put in we have 5 students and counter is 1, then it will end once counter hits the number of students. So we have to do it opposite here as a reminder. So there's our condition. Then what we did is we took in a score, so we did an input statement, and then we did an assignment statement to do our calculation, and you can follow that pseudocode from the pseudocode. Now the last thing that we have to do is we have to increment counter, otherwise our loop will never end. So here, following from 6-2 on how to do loops inside of Raptor, you're going to follow the same syntax so it loops around. Once you get out of there, you can code your other modules that will ask, we're going back up here we're going to code one to get the average, which is just another assignment statement inside of that module, one to print the average, which prints it, and then the last thing we do is an input to ask if we want to end it. So to complete main, after our module calls, we'll do another input that says, do you want to end the program? If that's yes, it ends the program. When we minimize this, you can get a look at the whole main and how your loop is controlled, and then the other loop is going to be inside of get scores.